Well, hello, NFT.NYC community. Good to be back again with another fun conversation. I have Matthew with me. So, Matthew is the co founder of Mojito. They've done some amazing things for Sothebys and other major brands. And so, there's a lot that we can learn from you, Matthew, about how do you take traditional art world on chain and so many other things. And certainly, a lot of people would be interested in what Mojito does and what it can offer other large brands that are going to be at our event. So, Matthew, please introduce yourself, say hello to everybody, and tell us a bit about Mojito.
Thanks, Ian, and hello, everyone at the NFT.NYC community. Really excited to see everyone soon in person. So I'm Matthew Iles. I'm the co-founder and COO at Mojito. I've been working in the Web3 space since 2016. And what Mojito enables as an API platform is for brands to be able to launch their own NFT marketplaces as well as community experiences. Increasingly, these token-gated experiences, token-gated utilities, et cetera, being able to host all of that within their own branded website or mobile app. And so Mojito provides the APIs and the strategic support for brands that are intrigued by Web3, but very, very nervous. And we help guide them to launch and then beyond, such as we have with Sotheby's, the Milwaukee Bucks, and other major brands. Really, those who have strong and global fan bases are the ones that we are working most closely with.
Now, Mojito was the first product company that was birthed out of Serotonin. Can you talk a bit about the parent company and what Serotonin does in the market in terms of being a go-to agency for all things Web3?
Yeah, absolutely. Serotonin is, I believe, the largest Web3 marketing firm, and now increasingly also offers professional services beyond marketing, and works most closely with the best and brightest Web3 startups, in addition to helping in places where it's necessary, marketing the launches of kind of the Web2 brands that are moving into the Web3 space. So Serotonin's worked with some great protocols and products that are really, the kind of infrastructure of Web3, Alchemy, Arweave, IPFS, and Filecoin, and a number of others. And it's really just been an awesome opportunity for us to operate at the center of Web3, and then have the opportunity to launch a new product like we did with Mojito. And now Mojito is its own standalone company. And that's, as you said, like where I focus 100% of my time now.
So while we talk a bit about Sothebys Metaverse, there's been a lot of approaches, a lot of activity last year or two. Some things have been well received, have done really great financially, and some things have even been great technical approaches and everything across the board. Talk with us a bit. How does the traditional art world go on chain, stay on chain, make an impact that's long lasting and more than just a moment for a great headline or some revenue moving from hands to hands? How does this stuff play out well over time?
Yeah, great question. I think a lot of it has to do with just even having a point of view about Sotheby's position in the market, as well as any Web2 company that's looking to move into Web3. First of all, you have to explain your intentions to your existing customers who probably have never bought an NFT before. And so we needed to help Sotheby's to even communicate the value of NFTs or communicate what they are, and why traditional buyers should be interested in not just buying physical art from Sotheby's like they've been doing for over 250 years, but also digital art or just digital assets in general. So every brand has to think about how to explain Web3 to their current customers. And there's many misconceptions about this. There's lots of concerns among the average consumer about either the safety of crypto, meaning like hacks and those types of kind of scary things that people scams, things like that. So we have to kind of get ahead of that whenever any large brand is communicating Web3 intentions to their existing customers. The environment is a very common concern by the average consumer. So we have to get ahead of that. In addition to, like I said, just actually putting together a product that's worth paying for. Then, so that's one challenge, talking to your existing customers about why they should be excited about Web3. Then you also have to speak to the Web3 native community, like NFT.NYC and others. And I think that there's been some brands that enter the space and are well received and are welcomed in, and there are other brands that have entered the space ham-fistedly, cash grab, whatever you might want to say about it, and there's a strong almost rejection of those brands by the Web3 community, and so you have to also figure out, I don't want to say cater to the Web3 community, but you have to figure out how to express your intentions to the Web3 community and align yourself with the Web3 community's values so that you get the strong response and kind of welcoming aspects that are necessary to any project being successful. So that's a challenge because you're often saying two completely different things, to two different groups, and yet it's the shared, it's the combination of both that's necessary for any brand moving into the space. I think one thing that the Web3 community has been looking for major brands to do is bring their existing customers over. Everybody wants Web3 to grow. Everybody wants more mainstream adoption. And big brands have millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions. We worked with Liverpool Football Club through Sotheby's, and they have over 100 million fans worldwide. Like that's a lot of mainstream adoption if we can figure out how to turn that key. But like I said, we also have to figure out how to align with the existing Web3 community. And so those are kind of just high level. The things that we work through with all of our customers is how to explain the value of Web3 and drive through some of the misconceptions to existing customers, then how to align oneself with the Web3 community.
Well, thanks for all that in-depth, thoughts. I think a lot of people, myself included, right? We don't get to play in the sandbox with Sotheby's and see how these transitions go. I want to ask about influence. It seems, my perception, 10 years ago, the majority of the influence in any Sotheby's auction was Sotheby's. They came with the name brand, and maybe they had a really great artist or a piece of art that came with more weight. But it feels like today, because Sotheby's is transitioning into a brand new space, there's more influence on the shoulder of the established Web3 artist, maybe even the established Web3 whale consumer of the art. And so I've seen more chitter chatter around who bought the art or the artist that's doing this Web3 approach. And so I imagine that's a big change. How do you at Mojito, as you're building out technology for Sotheby's, navigate some of the differences by which they engage media and the community? Because it's a totally new environment they're jumping into with established artists and established buyers. And even though they're new to the game, they're still the established brand. So can you give us some insight in terms of that transition and how the good decisions that they've made as they've done that others can learn from?
I think that one of the best decisions they made early on was just diving in fully to commit to having their own NFT marketplace. And like I mentioned earlier, what does it even mean to Sotheby's to be positioned in this market? You mentioned, what Sotheby's is known for. One of the things that they're known for is that they, expensive things are sold through Sotheby's. You don't typically think to go to Sotheby's when you might be able to get it really anywhere else. And so this idea of curation, this idea of the most extraordinary objects in the world, that's something Sotheby's aspires to and owns, is that the most extraordinary objects in the world find their way to Sotheby's for auction. And so there are extraordinary works of art and extraordinary NFTs that are not even art that Sotheby's seeks and has a global sales force sourcing. And an example of this is last year, Sotheby's sold the original source code for the World Wide Web written by Sir Tim Berners-Lee as an NFT. And so what was beautiful about this is, open source code was not, people have bought, for example, original patent drafts by famous inventors, or Leonardo da Vinci, like the Codex, is something that went for auction at Sotheby's. So there's a lot of history around these kind of originating famous documents or machinery or whatever it might be coming to auction later for people who want to have a piece of history. And so this idea that we were able to work with Tim Berners-Lee to place his code into an NFT so that it could actually be purchased and bought, previously not possible without NFTs, that sold for over $5 million last year to someone who just loves the history and the future of the internet. And so I think it's looking for opportunities, certainly within the art world. And obviously there's a lot of exciting Web3 native artists that Sotheby's does work with. And that's part of our strategy and part of our position in the market, is lifting up those most extraordinary creators in the natively digital art world. But there's a whole wide world of NFT use cases outside of that we are also sourcing opportunities through, because that's the other thing Sotheby's brings, is it just has this massive global sales network that's capable of identifying and finding the most extraordinary things in the world, whether that's art or otherwise.
For the secondary market, there's so many different marketplaces, right? I mean, there's the open seas, the nifty gateways, more unique in terms of super rare and one-off type approach. So how is the approach for a Sotheby's type brand, and for Mojito, being that you have your own marketplace for these initial sales and of course secondary sales as well, but the interoperability, even though it might be manual, what's the approach today in terms of leveraging other marketplaces for the secondary sales? And what's the thought as things move forward and become more and more integrated with one another?
Well, specifically, Sotheby's is, like I said, looking to continue to advance on what it's already done in the NFT space, and build and launch, continuously improvements to the Metaverse platform, such that there should be secondary selling on the Sotheby's Metaverse. There should be some new things we have coming later this year that I can't sort of announce yet, that are going to, I think, be very different and a unique differentiator than what is in the more like natively digital stuff, companies out there. Sotheby's just has such a unrivaled access to, like I mentioned, physical works of art and physical extraordinary objects. And we're looking for all sorts of ways to leverage the existing power of the Sotheby's business into Web3, as opposed to just focusing on natively digital art. That is a huge focus of the Sotheby's Metaverse strategy, natively digital art as NFTs. But there's a whole wide world out there that we're building towards that would enable what we think will be the best place to go find and buy and sell the most extraordinary NFTs, both within art and outside of that. And we're excited to be able to show off some of that later this year.
Well, that'd be fun. When it comes to extraordinary NFTs, of course, art, right? Digital art, especially now. You mentioned, of course, the code for the World Wide Web. What are some other diverse approaches, innovative, creative approaches by which there are new mediums being used as an extraordinary piece of art, maybe a one of one? As you mentioned, the World Wide Web code. Are there other things like that are happening, either that you and your team are working on, or that you're seeing and impressed by in terms of the diversity of approach and projects being brought to market?
I'm really excited about the combination of physical and digital. And so how might we augment the value of physical items if they are paired with a digital asset? And vice versa, how might we add value to an NFT if it grants you access to physical spaces or physical even items? And so, as I mentioned, there's just an abundance of physical works and artifacts within Sotheby's kind of remit, and we've already experimented with ways in which NFTs can be applied there. So, as one example. The other thing that Sotheby's is very committed to and has a lot of brand value associated with it is provenance and the certificate of authenticity. When something sells at Sotheby's, there's a guarantee that Sotheby's places on it, for example. So that's an important part of the buying process, is that Sotheby's is doing this curation and creating this provenance kind of chain. But of course, we know like the way that actually gets worked in the old school way is paper documents, basically passed from the seller to the buyer. And so earlier this year, we experimented with an NFT as the certificate of authenticity for a collection of, I think, about 100 prints from one of the most famous watchmakers of all time, of these sketches that he made of his famous watches. And what it meant is that you got this physical print that you could hang on your wall, but you also got an NFT that came with a digital representation of that print, as well as all the associated documentation that you would typically get in like a file folder in like paper. And now Sotheby's is mandating that this NFT be present if a seller ever wants to bring this back to market at Sotheby's. And so that's really interesting. And what do we gain if we make the NFT a certificate of authenticity representing a physical item? Like what other use cases do we get out of the NFT, like trading, maybe more frictionlessly? So those are the things that we're kind of experimenting with and excited about. Is absolutely natively digital art is going to continue to explode, and we will curate the best of it and work with the best artists there. But also, how can we work with traditional artists as well as across the other categories that Sotheby's oversees: luxury, fashion, wine and spirits, diamonds, etc., and explore ways in which NFTs can augment the value of those products or those consumer experiences.
Great. That's good insight. Thanks for sharing all the different types of things that they're involved in and the approach of the physical digital that you mentioned. As we wrap our conversation, can you give some clarity on what does Mojito as a tech partner do best? Like, what is the wheelhouse? What is your lane that you run in? And then maybe what are additional things that you can bring to the table, if you want to mention? But most importantly, what does Mojito not do? What should big brands not turn to Mojito for and ask for, because you're a tech provider providing these kind of owned marketplaces? I think a little clarity on that might be helpful, as potential prospects that see this conversation think to themselves, well, we got to get a hold of me. Mojito, look what they did for Sotheby's. Give us a little idea about what are you best at, and specifically, what do you not provide the market?
We may not provide everything directly, but we do want brands to understand we are a one-stop solution for them. And so what I mean by that is, not only do we bring the tech platform necessary for brands to engage in this space compliantly with credit cards or crypto, for users who have a wallet or for users who don't have a wallet, and we work through the tech platform solution for them, absolutely. But big brands have tremendous number of questions outside of that also need strategic support, whether it's across legal, compliance, just even the management of the treasury as they start getting royalties in crypto, and they've never held crypto before in their balance sheet. So like there's lots of things in the back office, and then the things we talked about as well when it comes to go to market, that how to say this to your existing customers and what should we say to the Web3 community. We help strategically with all of that. We may need to bring in partners to do executions of your front end website design, for example, or when you launch, community management and moderation. We won't do that directly ourselves. Brands will need to find a solution for that, either in-house or with a partner that we can source. But we don't shirk any responsibility really when it comes to helping major brands go to market in Web3. We bring the tech and the consulting necessary to do that.
Well, I'm glad I asked, because I wasn't totally clear on the one-stop solution approach and the ability for you, if you can't handle it technically or services, you have a bench of talent with contractors and teams that you can certainly have handle your clients' needs. So
exactly.
I think all of us at NFT.NYC, we're grateful for your place in the market, the great things that your team is doing. We anticipate more and more fun and significant developments over time. And certainly I look forward to seeing you in New York at NFT.NYC this upcoming June.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ian. I appreciate the time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Matthew, for joining me.